Kaboom! Hey, what's going on, guys? Ty here, Bench Clear Media. So today I want to talk about something, again, off the cuff that I've been thinking about. And I would really love to know your opinion on this particular topic, because as we look at sports cards, and obviously we've seen a crazy rise the last 18 to 24 months, really the last 12 to 18 months. And then we've seen some pullback and kind of a waning interest, I would say, in certain players. I think people, collectors, investors, whatever, are just kind of tired of the prices and they're not paying it, and so be it, right? That's very natural. But I'm very curious to know what your thoughts are with politics and sports and how that affects your mentality to collect players and teams. And even taking that a step further, how important is likability to you when you decide to collect a player? And I ask that because there's been a plethora of articles that have come out in the last few months just talking about the different sports and the declining viewership. I mean, the All-Star game for the MLB last week saw its second lowest viewership since they started monitoring this stuff. It was just a shade higher than 2019, the last All-Star game, which was the lowest viewed. So you saw a small uptick this year. And then you look at, like the NBA, right? The finals viewership's down 35%, right? The playoffs viewership was down almost 40%. And then obviously you had all the NFL stuff the last couple years, and you've seen viewership decline, and hopefully you start to see an uptick, in the next year or two. But regardless of any of that, right? You see this natural kind of, as politics are introduced into sports, viewership pulls back. And I'm curious, how when you see politics entering sports, does your disinterest in watching sports, or your decommitment to spending an evening or a Sunday afternoon to go watch your team play, how does that play into your desire to go buy cards for those players? Because as I think about it, like that stuff's important to me, right? And so I think about this in terms of players in general, and guys that I gravitate towards align with the things that I align with, right? It's not necessarily like, hey, any Royals player that is on the squad, I'm going to double down on and go get. No, it's what Royals players do I like, that I want to root for, that I want my kids to root for. Those are the guys I'm going to go put money into. But yeah, if the Royals come out and say, hey, we're going to stand for this and this and this, and it doesn't align with my beliefs, then yeah, I personally start to pull back some of the money that I put in my desire to go search after and find cards of the team, if that's where they're going to stand. Or if a player comes out and says, I'm going to stand on this side of the fence, and I'm going to use my platform to vocalize this, and I don't agree with it, like that detours me. It just does. Like I have less of a desire to find ways to put money in a guy like that. But I'm really curious what you guys think, right? I mean, as a team collector, I get it. You have a little bit more of an allegiance, and you accept more things because it's your team, and it's always going to be your team. And I do feel that way about, the Royals, the Chiefs, the Mizzou Tiger players. Like, I give them the benefit of the doubt more often than not, because that's just it's in my DNA, right? I want to support my teams and collect those guys. But there comes a certain point, right, where you just get fed up with politics always being injected into your sport. And you obviously see that with the continued ratings pullback. And I pose the question to you, and again, I want to see your comments below. At what point do you start to pull back money in sports cards because of what's happening outside of sports, and it's and it being injected into the sport? And at what point do you start to say, you know what, even though I PC'd this guy and all of a sudden he's doing this, I'm going to sell off and get out of this, because I don't really want to pour money into a guy like that. So what is your rationale when you're thinking about those things? I'd be really curious to know because I do think there's a correlation. I think there's a correlation between declining interest in sports and I know the argument's going to be, more people are consuming content online versus watching TV, and more people are consuming other mediums of it through collaboration videos or replay videos, whatever, right? Because they're getting back out in the world. Like I just don't buy. I don't buy that because I'm one of those guys, and I'm one of those guys who has turned off the TV and not watched a lot of football the last couple of years. Um, and I'm a massive NBA guy, and I'm one of those guys who I was so fed up with all of the politics being thrown at me that I just couldn't watch it all the time. And yeah, maybe I consume things a little bit differently. Maybe I look at the box score now, but I become more selective in who I really want to root for because I want to root for guys that I believe align with the way I look at life. And so I'm curious to know what you think and if that's a fair point that you stand for. So anyway, put your comments below. Let me know what you think and have yourself a good weekend.